Do you work at height in your business? In this video, we're going to teach you the steps you need to manage working at height. We're going right now. What's up guys, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. I'm James McPherson and Rebranding Safety is the YouTube channel and podcast translating health and safety to help you save lives and save money. What are we talking about today? We're talking about how to manage working at height. Something that blows people's minds, something that we can go from seeing people climbing up scaffolding to having 6-page work at height risk assessment to use an elephant's foot. It's crazy. So we're going to talk today on a reasonable way of how you, business owners, health and safety professionals, whoever you are out there can manage working at height safely, but also reasonably and practicably. Make sure you listen to the end for my top tips. Let's get on to the whiteboard. Okay, so like with everything in health and safety, the requirement is to assess the risk. And what we're going to do is basically cover this real simple guidance that the HSE have produced, which is a brief guide to working at height. And we'll link it in the description as well. And that covers 3 key areas: avoid, minimise and prevent. We're just going to go through those. So avoid does what it says on the tin really. We're trying to avoid working at height altogether. It's the same as the hierarchy of control or hierarchy of risk, whatever we want to call it in the risk assessing video. We're trying to eliminate the risk, so we do that by not working at height at all. So just say we're installing some lighting or something like that. Can we install that lighting lower down so we don't have to work at height? Can we use, a great example is window cleaners. Always used to use ladders and go up the ladders to clean the windows, and now you see them with a massively long hose pole thing that they just kind of, wash the window with. So that's a really, really good example. So the first thing you need to be doing, and remember, health and safety is a social exercise. So when we have any conversations with the people that are doing it, or people that might be assisting you, or if you are a, say, self-employed window cleaner, have a discussion with other window cleaners. Go on forums on the internet and just have a conversation. What do you guys do for this type of risk, blah, blah, blah. So you're having a conversation about how you can avoid the risk or how you can avoid working at height. So that's step number 1. So we've had a conversation around avoid and we've decided, well, we can't avoid it, we need to do it. Now we need to prevent. It should be that way around, my bad. There you go. So avoid, prevent, minimise. The point of prevent is essentially we're trying to prevent falls. So we're trying to prevent people falling from wherever they're working, on a ladder or whatever. So now you're thinking about, okay, we can't avoid working at height, but can we change the way we work at height so we don't fall? Can we work from existing platform or something? So let's say we've got like an existing mezzanine with existing edge protection. Can we work from there? Can we change the location of where we're installing the lights to somewhere where there is an existing platform? Instead of working from somewhere that's maybe got a fragile roof and you're doing some roof work, can you do the same job from part of the roof that is concrete? Sometimes this is just not possible because inherently the work, it needs to be done in that place, and that's why you're risk assessing, and that's fine. Then we'll move on to the next section, but it's important that we have these conversations in order. We've got to be our priority to avoid working at height, then it's our priority to prevent falls. And the best way to do this is fixed edge protection, changing the location like we spoke about. Or we could go on to things like pieces of equipment. So we might maybe wear harnesses with distance edge restricting lanyards, so basically restrict us from even getting to the edge. So they're kind of, the anchorage point is in the center of the area that we're working, and it stops us getting to the edge. Simple fixes they are, and they're quite effective. Other examples might be working from an MEWP, which is a mobile elevated working platform, so something like a scissor lift or a cherry picker, normally a much safer option. Things to consider there if you're outside on a scissor lift. I remember once changing some signage on a very high tall tower for a business I was working for, and we used a cherry picker, and it was not a windy day whatsoever. However, at the top of this cherry picker it was going like this. So things to consider with those pieces of equipment as well. But you're trying to work your way down the list, if that makes sense. Avoid working at height, prevent falls, Can't do it from a solid platform. Okay, can we go to a mobile elevated working platform like a scissor lift? No, we can't do that. Okay, can we restrict the distance to the hazard and stuff like that with the lanyards? No, we can't do that. Right, now we're starting to talk about the next one, which is minimise. Okay, so we can't avoid, we can't prevent, so now we need to minimise. What do we need to minimise? Well, we need to minimise the risk. We need to minimise the consequence of the fall. So we're either trying to minimise the distance of the fall, or we're minimising the damage of the fall essentially. So things that we might start considering here are like safety nets, airbags, fall restraint systems. Now, it's really worth noting that if you're talking about these kind of systems, you're talking about pretty high risk work at height, that actually now what you're saying is, I can't stop somebody from potentially falling, so I need to stop them from hitting the ground. I do genuinely think you need to engage with a professional, experienced, working at height expert. So with that being said, does that mean that we can't work at height without getting an expert? Well, no, not really, because when we're talking about safety nets and stuff like that, we're not really talking about using a ladder to clean windows or to chop a bush back or something like that. So we're starting to talk about that kind of mid-range work at height, but the same principles apply with that mid-range stuff of cleaning windows, etc., using ladders. Avoid, prevent, minimise. We still want to go through that process. So what would we be minimising or preventing when using our ladder? We would be trying to fix the top of the ladder. We would be trying to foot the ladder if we can. We would be considering where we're putting the ladder. We stop ourselves leaning over. We want to try and maintain 3 points of contact. All this stuff is trying to prevent a fall. So when we're using ladders, just consider then that we've got 3 different classes of ladders. We've got class 1, which is your more industrial type of ladder, which has got a duty rating of around 130 kilograms. Then you've got your class EN131, which is your commercial type ladder for 115 kilograms, and that's essentially your class 2. Then you've got your class 3 domestic, which goes up to 95 kilograms. They're obviously different, they'll be different in price, and they should kind of match the type of work you're doing. If you are doing kind of industrial work, you're working outside a lot, you're going to want a heavier duty ladder, so you're looking at your industrial type. If you're doing maybe like electrical work, you're an electrician, you do a little bit, you might want to get an electrician's one ladder, but your commercial ones probably fit the back, and then your domestic ones, obviously domestic use at home. Make sure you keep an eye on the channel, or we'll do a pre-use ladder safety check video coming soon. Let's move on to competence and then on to emergency planning. Competency. It's a legal requirement to use a competent person. It's interesting to note that the law doesn't really dive into the detail of what that is. That's for you to decide. So I'm going to try and give you some examples and tips and tricks on how to kind of work that out. So how I like to look at competency, if we think of it from a training point of view, if we think about how much they know about working at height, we want to make it proportionate. So let's kind of put this into context. You might have a builder that works at height on a scaffold system, for example. What they need to know is how to get on the scaffold, the risk of the work they're doing on the scaffold, so like falling objects from height and stuff like that. Hazard spotting maybe of the scaffold to be able to highlight issues if there is any, but really, other than that, not much else. So this could be delivered maybe by a couple of toolbox talks. They might be competent when you employ them. They've got a lot of experience in the scaffold system from working on it over the years, as opposed to a scaffolder, somebody installing the scaffold, who would have an in-depth knowledge of the requirements of scaffolding, the components of scaffolding, etc. And then if we flip that then to even more kind of like higher work at height, when we were talking about avoid and prevent and minimise, we're talking maybe we can't prevent the fall, so you're using safety nets and you're using fall restraint systems. We're talking real risky work at height stuff, and like I said earlier, you want to engage with a professional there. These people that are doing these works are going to need to be highly competent. And a good example is that we've done a podcast with Dan, who works offshore on ships, and a lot of the work they're doing is working at height down the side of the ship, in the middle of the sea, really high risk. And you could tell by the way that he's talking about it, he's got a high level of competence, and his team will have a high level of competence. That's the kind of way to put it into perspective. Now, another thing to consider with competency is it's not just training. So I talk about this a hell of a lot on the podcast and loads in the videos. We break competency down into CATE: knowledge, attitude, training and experience. And it's important that you have all four. And it's important you've got all all 4 of those? Do they have a knowledge of the systems and the risks of the work that they're doing at height? Do they have a positive attitude, a good attitude? That can change the whole game. You can have someone who's really competent but they have a crap attitude, all their training goes out the window. Have they been trained to do what they need to do? And remember, it can be proportionate. And are they experienced in that system? That doesn't mean you can only employ people that's experienced. If they're not experienced, then that's fine. Make sure they're surrounded or with people that are experienced. But it's kind of just weighing it up and go through those kind of 4 levels. Okay, so emergency planning. Emergency planning is something I think that not a lot of people consider. We think about doing the job. We don't actually think, what if it did go wrong? How do we actually get these people down? The long and short of it is, if you send them up, you've got to get them down. A few things to consider here. Lone working. You've all probably got Sky, or have seen the Sky man installing his dish on the side of the house. Think about it. He's lone working. He asks if he can install an anchorage point into your side of your house, and I think they leave it there. It does quite a lot for a very short duration of work. It's important to note that the HSE say that 30 minutes is a long duration of time. I don't think the Sky man that did my dish was up there for 30 minutes, yet he went quite a bit, in my opinion, over the top with his control measures of the risk that he was doing. Wasn't very high, wasn't up there for very long, yet installed an anchorage point in my house, had a harness and a fall arrest system. Why? Because he was on his own. So the risk was higher if he did fall. There's no one there to help him. They haven't really got an emergency plan. We're lone working. So if you're going to weigh the risks up, in my opinion, and I've never worked at Sky, so I'm kind of just having this discussion with myself, they've weighed the risk up and gone, it costs a lot to have 2 person. We could just try and minimise the chance of a fall as much as possible so that we don't have to have 2 people. I don't know. That's just what I thought when I was watching this gentleman install the desk. So, what does that mean from an emergency planning point of view? Well, if that person was to fall and they had a fall arrest system, and a fall arrest system being that when they fall, it holds them hanging in the air essentially, they've got a certain amount of time before suspension sickness starts to set in. And again, we mentioned that, Dan mentions that on the podcast, Working a High podcast, so make sure you check that out. We'll link it in the description. So things to consider there. How do you know they've fallen? There are some clever devices out there you can get, but they're very expensive. You've got to start thinking about this stuff. The easy solution is have more than one person. I've always tried to avoid working at height and lone working together. They can be quite risky scenarios, so why would you put 2 together? So try and avoid lone working if you can. If not, you need to have quite a robust emergency plan. Other things to consider. What about the rescuers? Is there a risk to the rescuers? Essentially, if you're rescuing somebody from quite a high area where someone's fallen from work at height, then probably the rescuers are working at height themselves. There's a classic case study in confined space where somebody goes into like a vat basically, and they die of asphyxiation. The next person goes down to save them, they pass away. And you've got the same case studies in work at height where there was a fragile roof in one business, I can't remember the name of the business. One person falls through the fragile roof, the next person goes up to see what happens, they fall through the fragile roof. The next person goes to fix the fragile roof, they fall through the fragile roof. 3 separate people all fell through the same thing. So you've got to consider the risks to everybody. So you put them up, how do you get them down? And if something goes wrong, how do you know and how do you get them out? Okay guys, thank you for watching. I hope you found that useful. If that has been useful, valuable, if you've just done anything, even if you thought it was shit, hit a like. If you hit dislike, then that's cool as well. Maybe leave me a comment, give me some feedback so I can improve. That would help me even more. If you manage work at height and you've got a top tip, put it in the comment below. Let us all know. Share your wisdom. If you do thinking of something to say. Let's get into my top tips then to finish off this video. Culture. Focus on your culture. If you can in any way prioritize something, it should be making your business a nice place to work. One of my podcasts I've done with somebody who's absolutely famous and potentially got kind of like a hero to some in the safety industry, the Jason Anker interview, Proud to Be Safe podcast, culture. So what do we talk about in that podcast? What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is if we make it comfortable for people to come over and say I'm not comfortable, if we make it a nice place to work, a place I want to go and work, I feel safe, I feel secure, I feel happy, then inherently it becomes a safer workplace anyway. So focus on your culture, make it a nice place to work, make your employees happy, and inherently they will be safer. Next point is be reasonable and think outside the box. Let's break them down into two. I was going to put them together, let's break them down into two. So be reasonable. You know, we don't want to see a 6-page risk assessment when you're using a small, step ladder or a small elephant's foot. It's absolutely crazy. So be reasonable, have a risk assessment when you need it, reasonable actions, reasonable training, step back and think. If you think this is health and safety gone mad, I've got to do it, it's a bureaucratic process, then no, it's you doing that, not anyone else. So be reasonable. Next one, think outside the box. If you're a scaffolder, here's a challenge to you. I saw somebody coming down scaffold not so long ago and had a conversation with a builder about whether this happens quite a lot, and they said yes, it happens all the time apparently. So here's my challenge to you. We only put normally 1, maybe 2 entrance, egress and access points onto the scaffold. So if you're at one side of the thing, you've got to walk to the other side to get to the exit. People climb down the side because the lunch thing is just down there. Maybe we can put an access and egress point on all corners. I don't know. I'm thinking outside the box. I'm just throwing it out there. I want you guys to think outside the box. Try and come up with some solutions that might solve your problems. They're my top tips. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, click a like and subscribe and the bell so you never miss another episode. Remember, put me in the comments below something about working at home. Let's talk, let's chat. See you in the next video, guys. Safe.